Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Thrunite Ti4T Penlight sort of flashlight thing. First off, I want to thank my buddy Jim for sending this guy along. He saw my reviews, which were both pretty ho-hum, of the Streamlight ProTac and the 4.7's Pre-On, and said, okay, those were fine, now you got to see a good penlight. And so he sent this little guy along with some other stuff, so I appreciate that very much there, Jim. Next thing, let's do a size comparison real quick. Right here it is against a AA battery, a AAA battery. This is a 2x AAA light, by the way. Here is an 18650. I'm sorry, this is an 18650. This is a CR123 sort of battery. Here is a standard US quarter. This is a generic sort of click stick pen, and so you can see that for a pen light, this is slightly wider than your normal pen, but about the same in terms of overall length. And then, of course, it wouldn't be my channel if I didn't compare it against the Spyderco Delica. So you can see it's not a huge light, but it's absolutely a little bit larger than some. And of course, next to another light here, this is my personal favorite choice for everyday carry. This is the EGTAC D25A. This is a AA light, single AA. So there you go. And then finally, like I said, this is a 2x AAA light. This uses any two AAA batteries. I'm using the Eneloop rechargeables in here at the moment, but you can use generic ones anyways. Yeah, there you go. You can keep that in mind. And as I screw this in, let's go on ahead and go into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this particular little flashlight here. Okay, so on the good side here, first off, this guy has a very nice switch to the top of it. It's very positive, it's very clicky, you can hear the click. Oh yeah, 100%. And considering that this wow. Well, I guess this life relies on half clicks too, if you want to think about things in terms of kilometers. Like everything half click at a time. Anyways, considering that this light relies on half clicks in order to change the brightness settings, the play on this switch is just about right. I like this switch a lot, and so I find it very, very compelling. Next thing, the pen light form factor can actually be compelling for a lot of folks because it is about the size of a pen. I mean, seriously, lengthwise. So you could put this guy in your shirt pocket, or if your briefcase has a loop for a pen, or for a couple of pens, you can throw this guy in there, and so this will fit in places, for instance, that a single AA light might not, or that a more full-size light like this little guy, the Phoenix UC35, where that might not fit. And so I gotta say, this form factor is kind of compelling in some situations. And so keep that in mind. Next thing, this light. Oh, sorry guys, I keep trying to say knife. I just finished a knife review. But this has a nice choice of neutral white or cool light bulbs from the factory. The neutral white gives you sort of a more yellow, but a more color correct sort of light. Whereas the cool white gives you the frostier sort of thing. Maybe you can't see this difference on camera, but you get much better color correctness out of the neutral white, which I appreciate very much. Next thing, this is using just a vanilla AAA battery. And considering that a lot of lights these days are using weird formats, CR123, 18650, whatever, the fact that you can just throw a pair of AAAs in this guy is nice, because that means that even if you're using, rechargeables or something fancier, if you run out of light, you run down to the corner store, you grab a pack of AAAs, and you're good to go for another, 24 hours or whatever. So I appreciate that very much. That versatility is definitely underrated in the flashlight world. This guy has 3 brightness settings. And so when you first turn it on, it's in its moonlight sort of mode. It barely looks like it's on. I mean, if you put it up real close, you can see it. They call this Firefly mode. But to switch to the next one, you can either twist the light and then untwist, or you can just click the back switch here and do a half click, and that'll move through it in the same way. There you go. And so that's kind of a nice thing. The fact that you have that option of whichever you want to use there. And then the 3 settings are the Firefly, which, like I said, is basically moonlight. You have a low, which is actually I think it's a fine light setting. It's solid. It's enough to navigate a dark room, no problem. And then the high is actually pretty bright. This is a real flashlight on high. 300 lumens is what they're claiming, and I have no trouble believing it. And the run times are actually pretty good. Even on the high mode, which is some serious flashlight, you get 90 minutes, which is more than fine. Chances are, if you need to use this light on bright mode, even for a little while, 90 minutes should accomplish pretty much any task. And then on the low mode, which again is absolutely fine for navigating a dark room with adjusted eyes, you have 12 hours, which is more than enough. And then the moonlight mode, which isn't really all that bright. I mean, if your eyes is super adjusted and you're in a very dark room, like if you're a mole person living underground, this will get you 5.7 days days on your moonlight mode. But again, that's not a super useful mode, so it's not like, you know, I don't know. But who knows? Like I said, mole people rejoice. Next thing, the beam pattern on this guy is pretty good. Here, I'll move to low so you can see it. But it is very diffuse. You don't get a really strong hot spot. I mean, sure, there's a stronger spot in the middle here. But if you aim this guy at a wall, it feels like a nice diffuse light pattern. It's not like, oh my god, pointy. And for me, at least, for my everyday life, generally speaking, a floodier light is going to be better, as is a light that's got no real defined, like, edges, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's like a sharp spot and then a bunch of others. I much prefer when you get a nice smooth light pattern, and this is pretty smooth. The light itself is waterproof, which is something I appreciate. And the price on this guy is pretty excellent. These guys are coming in around 40 bucks, depending on the retailer you look at. And honestly, for what you're getting here, that's a pretty good deal. And, some of the other stuff I carry on a regular basis, this guy comes in closer to 70. That's pretty solid. And so, to me at least, that's what's good here, is that the price is excellent. The waterproofing is good. Nice beam pattern, good run times, 3 settings, each of which, the high is more than bright enough outside. The low is more than bright enough for mole people. Uses AAA's, choice of neutral white or cool white. The Penlight form factor can be handy, and it is very fidgetable, and it has a nice positive clicky switch. Let's talk about the grade here. Okay, to me, what is great about this light, 100%, is that it is beautifully made. It's a very nice object, in addition to being a pretty nice light. And that shows in a couple of ways. It's got a very nice contour to it overall. It's not just a cylinder here. They very much tried to make it, and you can see it's got kind of an hourglass sort of thing. You can see this beautiful fluting up here at the top. I don't know what the purpose for that is, but by God, it is attractive. And it makes the light a whole lot more interesting than it otherwise would have been. I mean, even on this end, it's an attractive light. And so, to me at least, this is a nice object in addition to being a nice light. And that's a little thing, but at the same time, to me, it's great. And it sets this guy a little bit above some of the other, 2 times AAA pen lights I've handled. So something that is both utilitarian as well as kind of nicely made is a beautiful thing to me. Let's talk about what's bad. Okay, so first off, on the bad side, I just talked about how beautiful it is and how it's nice, smooth curves. The problem is those smooth curves are a little bit slippery, so that means that if you're working in the Vaseline factory, this might not be the best choice for you. For me, it works fine, but yeah, keep that in mind. Next thing, the clip on this guy, I feel like needs a little bit more ramp. What I mean by that is that a very good pocket clip often has an area that kind of pops up off and a little bit more readily than this guy does. This just barely jumps up there, and that's something that I don't particularly care for. You can get it into your pocket, but it fought me a couple of times when I didn't expect it to, and so that just means they need a little more ramp there. Not a big deal. Next thing, this guy has this clicky button in the back here, and because there's a little bit of looseness to it, and because of center of gravity and whatnot, this is not a tail-standable light. That is one advantage to lights that have this guard around the back of it. Makes it very easy to tail stand them. That is a disadvantage because it makes it a little hard to get at it, and, with the thinner, I can see why they didn't, but keep that in mind. Next thing, I gotta say that for me personally, actually, the Penlight form factor isn't super compelling for on-body carry, because it's a little bit long and a little heavy for my shirt pockets, but it's a little bit odd in a pants pocket. And so for me, at least, if I'm carrying something on my person, I'm going to do something a little bit smaller, like this little guy. Or if I'm keeping it in a bag or something along those lines, usually if I'm already in a bag, I can afford to do something a little bit bigger, which will have better battery life and, offer some other compelling features in addition to what this guy has. And so for me, at least, these pen lights, although they're fine, they're not necessarily the choice I would choose. But that's entirely personal, and it may be better for you. Next thing, the lowest mode on this guy is very, very low. I mean, this light on low mode is sort of, is this thing on? I mean, you can absolutely, but a couple of times I found myself setting it down with the low mode on and then kind of forgetting that and not even noticing it until, that's just not great. The low being super low is actually great in some situations. If you are in a dark area, your eyes are adjusted, that low mode is going to be great for you. Mole people are going to love this, but it's not great in other situations. And that actually brings me to the last thing, which I'm going to call bad, which is that the light's default setting, when you first start this up, is to go into that super low mode. And I am of two minds here. I am deeply conflicted. If you are in a deep, dark situation, that is absolutely 100% the correct approach. You have the light come on to its lowest setting, and then if you want brighter, you adjust upwards. This is good because if you accidentally turn it on, guess what? You can have it on in this mode for 5 days before you run out of battery life. And you will not blow out your night vision by doing that. But the problem with this is that every time you turn the light on, although that time since has about 10 seconds worth of mode memory. But the thing is, every time that you turn the light on, it's going to go back, once the mode memory's out, to that low setting. And so most of the time, when you turn this guy on for everyday carry, just in your everyday life, Firefly mode just doesn't feel bright enough. It's like, wait, did it even turn on? And so practically speaking, to turn this light on in most situations, you have to click it and then half-click it again to get it into your low mode. Is that a big deal? No, not at all. And if you turn it back on within 10 seconds, it'll go right back into whatever mode you were in. But practically speaking, it's a little bit less ideal to have such a low mode be your startup if you are in kind of an everyday carry situation. If you're in the deep dark, that's the way to do it. And so, for me at least, for my personal set of uses, that's not something that I love. But I can totally get why they did it. I don't think it's ugly. I don't think it's a bad plan. It's just not the plan that works best for me. So, there you go. That, to me, is the bad, is that it's the light's default setting is very, very low, and indeed that low mode is very, very low. The Penlight form factor isn't super compelling to me. It doesn't tail stand. I get it. The clip needs a little bit more ramp, and ultimately it's a little bit slippery, but not a big deal. On the ugly front, honestly, I can't find anything that's ugly. The super low mode thing I totally get, so I can't call it ugly, even if it's a little ugly for my everyday life. So let's just go into the final conclusion here. So indeed, my buddy Jim sent along a much, much better light. Compared to the Pre-On, compared to that ProTac, this is a world better. This is way, way above, because it's got a lot of good stuff going for it. It's got good modes, with the very low, with the good low, and then the high, that is actually bright enough to be used as a real flashlight on a regular basis. This absolutely puts out more than enough light for, I think, most people's everyday carry sorts of tasks. If you're looking for something that's super throwy or spotlighty, well, let's face it, you probably don't want a pen light anyways. But look, this is really solid in terms of the light it puts out. You also get very good run times. Like I said, 90 minutes on high is more than enough, and that low mode is good to go for 12 hours, which will make you that'll get you through a dark night, so to speak. So, this has got more than enough light to it. The fact that it is also a beautifully made object, and that the worst thing I can say about it is that the low mode, that thing isn't really configured optimally for my life, that means this is pretty damn good, and I think, frankly, it is probably a gem. I don't have a strong head of steam for it. I'm not like, oh my god, yes, I want one of these, because like I said, the Penlight form factor doesn't work well for me. But this is a very, very good pen light, and I would have zero trouble recommending this light to pretty much anybody who loves this form factor and wants to give that a shot. So that's, I guess, my final conclusion, is that this is a great light, putting out great light at very nice brightness with good run times, and there's really not all that much wrong with it in the grand scheme of things. So I hope that this has been interesting, Jim. Thanks for showing me better, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day, and I hope this review lit up your life. See, you had to hit it twice. Bye now.